Hey, listen up. Yeah, we here and we locked in. Let's keep it going all the way to the top 10. We feel the turtle, so it's no other option. Fred and Ryan, just watch them. Let's take it to the max. It's the shell and tell. They come with all the facts. It's the shell and tell. Let's take it to the max. It's the shell and tell. They come with all the facts. It's the shell and tell.
What's up, Terp fans? Fred, Ryan, and Ahmed back for yet another edition of the Shell and Tell podcast. It's Monday, July 25th. And we got a lot to talk about on this week's show as usual. We're officially now 40 days away from kickoff 2022. As in this week, we talk all things football on this week's show.
Yeah, specifically an article defaming our beloved Terps that we got to get into a little bit, or at least a mention that blew up the Terps Twitter.
Yeah, and like we said, with 5 weeks until the season opener, where you start our annual position breakdown as we dive deep into the quarterback, running back, and tight end rooms and what to expect for the 2022 season.
Yeah, a lot to be excited about for the upcoming season for sure. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, this week's show is sponsored by Quick Stretch and Body Works. Quick Stretch and Body Works help athletes with their performance and recovery periods, both during and in the off-season. The naturally formulated athletic performance and recovery lotion is an easy, effective way for athletes to prepare for skilled training and workouts in full swing. Founded by Todd Smith, a former college athlete and head athletic trainer at 2 collegiate programs himself. Even some of the athletes at the University of Maryland have taken advantage of the product, including star linebacker Ruben Hippolyte II. Make sure you head over to quickstretchbodyworks.com and check it out today. That's quickstretchbodyworks.com. Like I said, fellas, countdown to kickoff in T-minus 40 days. Saturday, September 3rd versus Buffalo, 12
First
o'clock.
tailgate, let's go.
Yeah, man, down at Capital One Field. I'm excited for it. Ryan and I are 60 days away now from our campus tour continuing as well this season down in Ann Arbor in Michigan. Looking forward to that too.
Yeah, I was talking to a couple of the players the other day on a Twitter live space, telling them we're going to be in Michigan for them taking down Big Blue, and they were all very excited to hear the Terps' confidence that we're going to be taking down the big dogs in the big house.
That's right. Well, before we do too much, man, before we talk about this year's roster and start getting into our positional breakdowns, I want to talk a little bit about 2023 and just give fans a little bit of a recruiting update. And the reason I say this, because I was on social media the other day through Twitter, scrolling through, anything
doom
Terps related.
scrolling.
Yeah, man. And all the negative Nancy's out there. I come across a tweet that's comparing our recruiting class up there with Syracuse. I think we're ranked somewhere in the 80s overall as a class. And I mean, you know me, I'm not a big fan of star ratings. I'm not a big fan of class ratings, that kind of thing. But 80s doesn't sound very good, right? So I want to talk a little bit about what this class really truly brings on the field beyond what these analysis and rankings want to say.
Yeah, I mean, you got to start with the numbers, I guess, here that they use, the things they pretend matter. I mean, they say that our average is a 3-star rating, basically. It's an 84.62 is where we're at. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, you want to compare us to Syracuse. We can compare very recently to Syracuse. We beat them 20-63 with a Josh Jackson-led Terps team, all right? The guy that literally fell apart and couldn't see left or right. Oh, yeah. Come on. We all saw what that looked against Temple. Temple exposed him. At least Talia waited for a top 5 defense to expose them last year in a heartbreaking moment. Not Temple.
Right.
So we can already just wash the Syracuse stuff away. No bottom end ACC team is comparing to the Terps. It's just not the reality of how it is.
Yeah, and I mean, again, stars, and I get it from from the fans' perspective in the sense of, this is to date Loxley's worst recruiting class since he's been here, and I get that, but there definitely have been guys you look in the secondary like Dante Lovett, he's a high 3-star in a lot of places. I think both On 3 and 24/7 have him in that 87, 88 range. And Maryland, they had some questions with him. They moved forward with other guys in the secondary, Alex Moore, Michael Mormon. They had they were able to kind of lean on their own evaluations, and if it was from a pure ranking perspective, I mean, I'll tell you what, there have been guys in the past that Maryland has taken because of their early rankings, and kind of help with that buzz. And they didn't end up signing with Maryland. So I think this cycle, just kind of with the portal, the way that it's evolved, and then with obviously name, image, and likeness, how that is just kind of really taking the college football by storm with pay for play at a lot of these places.
Right.
Maryland, I mentioned that on the site. Maryland's not going to do that, and I still think that's the most sustainable approach from a long term perspective. So a lot of these guys, Maryland got them in on campus for 2, sometimes 3 workouts, 7-on-7s, camp visits, things like that. And, we're able to kind of move forward after the camp visits at the official visits. So I get it. The NIL stuff is kind of still not squared away, should be. But, at the end of the day, you kind of want to build your foundation of your recruiting class with guys that want to be here, especially, seeing guys transfer.
Absolutely. I mean, and to be honest with you, I don't know if it's just me, and maybe it is, but I feel in the 30 years that I've watched college football and I've seen some of these ratings, I feel like over the last 10 years, these ratings have gotten worse and worse over the years. And maybe that's financially driven. I'm not going to say for sure it's financially driven, but it sure seems that way. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you, if Loxley and crew has done anything, man, they have found those diamonds in the rough, quite a few of them, those 3 stars that end up playing to that 4 and 5 star potential.
Yeah, and not only is it the ratings that are wrong, but also just what those ratings do to these players. You get these when you're told you're the best thing since sliced bread and you've been the very best player on every team forever, which I mean, honestly, even the 3 stars have been the best team on every team forever. So I guess that's the wrong one. But when you're told you're top 10 in the country for your whole life, and then you get to a level where you have to work for it, some of those guys do. Some of those guys put in the work, get it done, and they are the great NFL players that you're expecting, and others just fold because they've been blowing people up with just God-given talent and no effort their whole life, and they don't know how to take the adversity. It happens all the time. Look at last year. Your 5-star Terrence Lewis never put on shoulder pads. He went to a new team down there at UCF, and the only thing he put on down there was handcuffs. I mean, what are you gonna do? It just happens. And then also with the transfer portal opening up a whole nother bag of worms. These guys with the 4 and 5-star tags, they continue to have these options from these high-end coaches that they turn down. Even when you won once, if they're not 100% happy with every decision through coaching, which how do you coach someone when you're under that much pressure to be like, don't make him upset? Well, that's kind of part of it. Like, I hated most of my coaches some days. Like, at the end of it, you're supposed to appreciate what the coaches did for you. But in the fucking throes of it, like, there's a lot of times you don't like the dude. Like, that's just how it works. He's telling you what you're bad at.
Yeah. And I think you kind of touched on it, Ryan, from the off the field perspective, the work ethic, the mentality. I remember years ago, I was a guy who was top 10, and then he dropped to I think top 100, top 150, and I was with another network at the time, and he kind of said, it's like, why did you guys drop me? Alabama won't take me anymore. But then, talking about stars ratings and all that. Last week I was at one of St. Francis's, evening workouts. It wasn't like their official workout. It was under Justin Winters. And I did an interview with Idris Farouk, who's the younger cousin of Oklahoma Sooner wide receiver Jalil Farouk. And, he mentioned, he was like, I want to be a 4-star after this season. And after the interview, I kind of said, hey, just my 2 cents, and I get to your perspective, and I get, it kind of validates you, but like, what's going to come first, your offers or your rating? And I told
Right.
you the offers are going to come. Worry about that. Worry about yourself. Worry about just doing what you need to do. All those offers are going to come, and then everything else will fall into line after the fact. I mean, very few times you see a kid, kind of get those, get that, get that high praise before all the schools recognize him, and that's why the schools have their own evaluation and things like that. But yeah, this cycle just as a whole, I mean, it's been I've continued to say it's going to be a wild fall going into the off season, just with NIL and transfer portal, and just players that are looking to fill their spots. It's been incredibly accelerated. I know multiple 4 stars that have been essentially pressured into committing immediately because they'll quote unquote lose their spot, and it's just kind of kind of wild. So I think now is when a lot of schools can make all these kinds of promises about NIL, and I think we're starting to see that at USC kind of crumble a little bit with Jordan Addison. But come November, late October, December, that's when a lot of these schools are gonna have to follow through. So Maryland will have NIL stuff in place. Will they be able to compete with the Texas A&M type? No, I'll just be the first to say it. No, and I don't think I'm the first to
Right.
say it. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think they'll might be one or two more announcements, and then from here on out, it's going to be the elite guys like the Neo Averys, Deshaun Womack, Nicholas Harbor.
Right.
That's kind of the type right now.
Yeah, and you talk about the transfer portal and its impact, man. And then you scroll around social media and you hear the rumors of that, the whole one transfer being done, and it
Yeah.
evolving to this unlimited amount of transfers in the future. So it's only going to get worse. It's not
Yeah.
going to get any better. So
I
it'll be
mean,
interesting to see what happens with that.
I'm not sad at what's left from our class last year, even though you're sitting here looking at Chop's gone, Terrence Lewis is gone, Jennings is gone. Like, we still
Daryl
got an
Jackson.
awful lot of play. Yeah, Daryl Jackson. We have an awful lot of players. And then we talk about this again. Their average of 84.62, this 3-star rating. Let me drop you some names here and see if you're happy with these players. Dante Demas, 3-star, 85. Yeah, pretty great.
Yeah.
Tareeb Still, 86, 3-star. Right around that same number, was one of the most prepared freshmen I've ever seen. A freshman All-American, 2-time Big Ten honorable mention, a dude. Chigakonkwo, 3-star, 87, just got drafted. DJ Moore, 3-star, is a Pro Bowler. Darnell Savage, first rounder, 84, right under our rating right now. Like, it doesn't matter. Jake Funk, 82, got drafted. Torrey Smith, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 85. These guys, there are great ones at this number. We're getting them right in this role. Hopefully they don't have all the head case issues of being told you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, because they still got something to prove. These guys seem to want to be at Maryland. They seem to want to have ties to the program, so you can keep them around a little bit better than these just like one-off 5-stars from God knows where that we get walking in here for just to practice to play for somebody else next year. I'm not too upset about it. I think it'll be fine. I do want to get a couple big fish, of course. There's still big fish out there. It's always fun. There are some dudes that I think are just locks, like you said, with Harbor. Like, that guy's just going to be great. There's just no chance he's not going to be great. So, yeah, of course there's those guys, and we don't have those locks. But it's not as bad as the sky is falling that Twitter blew up to.
Right. And of course, you want to continue to add talent to your roster, and you're going to do that hopefully over the next couple of weeks. But Ahmed, beyond star ratings, class rankings, all that, what do you see in this class? I mean, even being in the 80s, right? I mean, are you seeing good value in some of these players that are coming in?
Yeah, I mentioned this on Inside the Bag with Mason Viner. I mean, Braden Waslowski, I'm a big fan of him. I think that if he played at a bigger school, he would have much more attention. And, he only really entertained the schools that he camped at. And, Rutgers was kind of the other school in the mix with him. I think Dylan Wade, he's going to be enrolling early, that 3-star tight end out of Jones High School, quarterback turned tight end. DJ Samuels, I think he's a 3-star, but I know measurables obviously plays a huge role into who's going to take him and what he kind of projects as. I think he's going to be a really good fit, and he's another guy that enrolls early. Derek Rogers, he's only been playing football for about 15, 16 months. He's a potential cornerback, but right now he's a wide receiver for Maryland's class, and that's where Maryland likes him. DeAndre Duffus, he's another guy, interior offensive lineman that I like. Tavon Nelson, Dylan Fontes, both of those guys just committed. They've been kind of committed for a couple of weeks and just kind of went public over this past weekend. I think both of those guys are really good. Daniel Wingate, got a chance to watch him with Logan DeLizio, my guy, back in last fall for Pilati. He's a really long, very athletic outside linebacker who can play inside, depending on whether Maryland kind of shifts from 3-4, 4-3. But I think that he has really good sideline to sideline range. And then AJ Szymanski, he's not going to enroll early right now. He could change that down the line, but I think that's another guy that he kind of steps in that tight end room where he's not needed day one, but he adds kind of an ability to serve as that next pass catcher. So I do think there are some guys. If I had to go with two guys, I think Waslowski and I think DJ Samuels. I think DJ Samuels is probably the most criminally underrated guy in my opinion. I mean, he was. I mentioned this again on the site. Last summer at this time, really, he was one of 3 New Jersey priority targets: is Adon Schuler, Chase Basantis, and DJ Samuels. that I'd heard that cornerbacks coach Henry Baker was kind of leading the charge on, and they were like, we need these three, and that persistence with Samuels paid off. Obviously, went 1 for 3. Basantes just committed to Texas A&M. Schuler went to Notre Dame, but I think Samuels he and comes from Bergen Catholic. He broke the sack record at Bergen Catholic, which is a New
Right.
Jersey powerhouse. He's a really productive player, and I think that's a guy that Maryland fans, if you're looking at maybe there's 3 stars that very likely to outperform, Samuels and Wazlowski are kind of my two.
I
I
like it.
really love the new commitment from Dylan Fontes. I don't how many 6'5", 280-pound defensive ends we got rolling out there. Like that's if he's not as good as a 5-star, he's got the frame for a 5-star. Like this is a Ngakwe all over again. Make it work. Like
Right.
teach this kid how to teach him up, and he's got the body for it. And that's what I see in this class is a bunch of dudes with stuff you can't teach. They're long, they're fast, and we'll work on the rest. Like I'm sure they all got skills too, but like they have the things that you can't teach, and I'm good with it.
And whenever you talk about guys that impact and kind of maybe play an earlier role, I mean both Fontes and Tavon Nelson are going to enroll early, so just getting that extra time, that 6 months on campus, and Maryland goes to a bowl game, that only helps them. So I think I do think that there is some pretty good value, and kind of filling out that foundation of your class right now. You get a chance to kind of see their senior year. There could be other outside attention. Again, I think it's going to be a pretty crazy next couple of months, but I do think there's lots to like.
Yeah, and last year they did a really good job with the recruiting class and bringing in some top level talent. At the end of the day, like you said, you got to have that foundation, you got to have that depth, right? You got to have the pieces behind them, and I think that's where this class you're really going to see the value. You're going to have a lot of guys that buy into the program, really want to be here, local guys that have ties to the program. I think all that's positive. You're not going to have a top 20 class year in and year out. That would be fucking fantastic, but that's just not going to be reality, at least not at this point in this stage with Locks and what he's got going on.
And you also don't always have the class, like Ruben Hippolyte's class stands out to me, where he was this big time, he was a 5-star, I think, before he committed to us, and a 4-star shortly thereafter,
Right.
and where he was early and he was allowed and he was part of, like, that's not always the case. Sometimes it's late. Sometimes it's rack late. Sometimes it's cross late. Sometimes it's Barham super late.
Andre Roy.
It happens. Like,
Exactly.
so like just to freak out now when we've seen it over and over again with Locks that we will be better at the end of this, not worse. It's whether it's a huge splash like that again is up to see, but we'll be better than we are now.
And you know what? I've heard it at other schools in Maryland. They fit in that boat, but the just watching the outgoing transfers. There's an emphasis on finding guys that want to be here for the right reasons. And if you're coming and the first thing that you mention is, hey, what's your NIL package? I mean, I even saw an article recently about if that's kind of one of the first questions you ask, you kind of fall down the leaderboard a little bit. And so I do think that just kind of making sure that there was a little bit more roster stability. That was kind of a point of emphasis. So making sure these guys wanted to be here for the right reasons. I think that was something Maryland kind of coveted a little bit more.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into 2022 and why us as fans have reasons to be optimistic about this upcoming season. As we're going to do our annual positional breakdown. We've done this now for the last 2 years. This will be our 3rd year doing this. This week, we're going to break down the quarterbacks, the running backs, and the tight end group on this week's show. So let's start. Let's start with quarterbacks. Let's start with the man himself, the starter, Taulia Tagovailoa, and what he brings to this year's squad.
Are you sure he's the starter, Fred? Is there like a controversy?
I think that's, yeah. I don't think there's any controversy on that at all.
Okay. I guess we'll just announce him now.
Hands up and down. And it's the kid that came in, obviously, from Alabama in 2020, started 4 games that year, and held some uneven play in 2021, obviously led
Northwestern
Maryland.
wasn't great.
Yeah, exactly. But last year, obviously, led Maryland to their first bowl win since 2010. Put up a huge year, set single season records for the Terps in passing yards, completion percentage, single season touchdowns, single season 300-yard passing games. I mean, he did it all for the Terps last year. Do you see him repeating that type of a year or building on that and have an even bigger year with all the weapons he's got?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has definitely an opportunity to kind of take that next step. Obviously, it's inevitable to talk about, but just the amount of returning production, and especially across the offensive line, all five starters. I think that along the offensive line, I think that only adds to what Leah can do this year. Another offseason where he's kind of able to build a rapport. And I thought Mike Locksley made a good point in his interview with Greg McElroy last week. The next step for Leah is just kind of maintaining the emotional side of things for him, making sure the highs aren't too high, the lows aren't too low. But from a skill set perspective, and he even mentioned it, but if you take away that second quarter against Iowa and, portions of the Ohio State game, but, the Ohio State game was just a tough game. Jashawn Jones also got hurt that game, but I think Talia showed more consistency, and you're kind of seeing a more confident Talia, even behind the scenes and from a day to day perspective. He's just been able to gradually kind of get out of his shell, which I think is a byproduct of his added confidence year in year out as he kind of gets more familiar with being a leader and more comfortable with his teammates. And he's just like his older brother Tua, where he's just always ready to work. So I do think that he has a very good chance, especially with Jacob Copeland there. I think he has a chance to definitely take that next step.
Yeah, the you mentioned like the turnovers. I think if fans can harp on anything about Leah, if you're just looking at the stat book, right? I think most people focus on the turnovers, the interceptions. Well, 5 of those came in one game, like you said, against Iowa, right? It was a bad outing. He lost his star wide receiver, his best target in that game. It was an emotional mess for him, and it wasn't a good look. I'll give him that. It wasn't a good game. It is what it is. But beyond that, I mean, completing almost 70% of your passes, the guy isn't inaccurate with the ball. He just had a bad game and a couple extra turnovers after that. Ryan, the one question I had for you, and we've talked about this a little bit with wide receivers, right? Wide receivers tend to be a little bit diva-ish, right? And obviously he's got quite a few targets, quite a few big name targets that are all going to want the ball because all these guys are vetting for NFL draft positioning, where they were going to be in the draft. Do you think that becomes a challenge in target shares and getting these guys involved? Do you think that becomes an issue at all this year?
I don't think so. I think there's just such a big pie that when you split it up, it's still fine. And that these guys are, they stay fresh. Both in the running backs and the wide receivers, they just rotate so many bodies in. These guys don't have the wear and tear of some of these programs that just like have these workhorses that they get the ball 20 times a day, whether they're, a first round wide receiver or first round running back. Even when we have the top talent on our team, and Ant McFarland, he wasn't the bell cow. He wasn't somebody we were just force feeding things to. Were there times I wish Jake Funk would have got the ball on the goal line at Temple 4 times? Yeah, it happened. But for the most part, it was a nice even split throughout their career, and it helps them not be beat to death. And I think the wide receivers see the same thing. I don't see any reason Jacob Copeland would have came here if it was going to be an issue. I don't see why we wouldn't have lost some of the bigger names in the wide receiver room. We lost a couple good, supporting pieces, but nobody that we were just like scratching our head was definitely going to be in the top 5 this year. So I just think it would have been a bigger issue. We saw a mass exodus other places on the team, and we didn't see it there, so it shouldn't be an issue.
How about you, Ahmed? Any comment on that?
No, I think that's fair. I think Talia kind of has this opportunity to just kind of pick who's open. I mean, just kind of with so many complementary guys at his disposal, especially even out of the backfield with potential to have a more balanced offense a little bit. Again, it's kind of pick your poison. I mean, if you're going to double team Demas, well, Copeland's going to be open. And if you double team Copeland, well, Rack's going to be open. You can't, I mean, there's just, if we're going to talk tight ends, Corey Dyches, what he's been able to do. And I think with Dyches being able to kind of play wide receiver in the spring because of numbers, and then now he's going to be back in the tight end room and get a chance to split out wide and just a little chance to kind of develop more as a receiving threat under Gunnar Brewer. I think there's kind of a lot of options at his disposal, and I think that's why there's so much confidence in the offense.
Talia's problems last year, you look back, I mean, it was red zone, and then it was the big first half of the Illinois game and the second quarter on in the Iowa game. Like those were and you watch that Illinois game if you have a chance. I mean, you just see like that's the fight that's in this quarterback. That's the real fight, that when he's not beaten to death by the fact of losing one of his close friends and one of his number one targets, that he just fell apart in the Iowa game. The fight in that Illinois game, to watch that comeback that was absolutely unbelievable, and watch him run up to Locks. I got you, coach. Like That's the team that you want to root for. That's what we're so excited to see this year. That's why those 5 fat guys came back and need to keep this man standing, because if this man stand at the end of the year, Maryland fans are going to be happy again. They're going to be happy again. I don't care how hard this schedule is.
I mean, listen, a lot of this team's success ride or dies with Leah and the production of Leah in this offense. Yeah, obviously a guy that's named to the Maxwell Award watch list. He's one of the top rated quarterbacks in the country going into this year. That's huge, right? But I think the big question mark at the quarterback position is going to be the guys behind Leah. If QB1, God forbid, let me knock on everything wood in this room,
gets
goes
COVID
down,
and is out
right?
1 week. That's what we're talking about, Fred. Just 1 week. We're not discussing anything more than that. All right.
I'm literally knocking on everything.
That's the only reason we're seeing these guys is that 1 week, like, has a COVID. He's just sniffling a little bit, but they won't let him play. That thing.
You know, last year, obviously, you had Lance Lejeune leave out because he was a mental case, and now he went down to Louisiana. I don't even know if he's playing anymore. But then you had Reese.
You didn't
Udinsky.
like his one-word tweets every day?
God,
you didn't love those?
No.
Every
Good
day I'd
riddance.
call Fred and be like, what does it mean? Oh my
I was
God,
so
is he
hyped.
leaving?
I was so hyped about him after that QB1 show or whatever it was. I don't know. I had a lot of
I
hope
wanted
for
him to
It
be
just
better
didn't
than he
pan
was.
out.
I did.
Yeah, me too. But then obviously, you know, they did get their transfer in last year in Reese Udinsky, and I think we all kind of had a little bit sense of like
Confidence.
comfort, and confidence, knowing that if Leah went down, we had somebody that could step in, right?
Carries a
and
couple games.
That's going to be a big question mark this year because the transfer that we get in this year, Billy Edwards out of Wake Forest. Tell us a little bit about what he brings experience-wise, if there's much experience. I think that's probably the biggest question mark with this guy is how much time does he really have in and how ready is he?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big reason why, and he was able to kind of draw some other Power 5 interests once he was in the portal, but just being the younger brother of the offensive GA, Kyle Edwards, that kind of gave him a lot more inherent familiarity with, you know, what Maryland does, how they operate, what the day-to-day looks like, and then what the offense looks like, how he kind of fits in there. And it's kind of known ever since, you know, he transferred in, he'd kind of be the primary backup with, you know, some other inexperienced options behind him. But Edwards, 6'3", 207 pounds. He's more of a pocket guy that kind of fits like Leah, where he's capable of making plays and extending the plays with his legs, but he's going to be in the pocket. Now, again, from a game perspective, he doesn't have that much experience.
Right.
So former 3-star prospect. It was previously committed to Old Dominion before he flipped to Wake Forest out of high school. Former 42nd ranked prospect in Virginia in his class. He was a friend of current wide receiver Ty Felton, if memory serves correctly as well. So again, I think that, you know, it's a fair question to say, you know, what can Billy Edwards do? But I think just the fact that he was able to get in June, early June, kind of get situated a little bit. I think he was in there, 2.5 weeks before Jaden Saray and Cam Edge got on campus. Obviously, John Griffith, the former walk-on or current walk-on, was already with the program, but, you know, Edwards kind of supplants him as that QB2, as we mentioned. So I think that, you know, again, from an in-game perspective, he's still kind of an unknown, but just, you know, what he's going to operate with, you know, if he does come in and he has to play, he'll be able to be just kind of a game manager. And again, kind of with the running game expected to be a little bit more evenly distributed. And then obviously the weapons at wide receiver, you know, you got like Marcus Fleming, Jashawn Jones, where you can do a number of things with him out of the slot, jet sweeps, things like that. You just kind of need him to manage the game a little bit. So I think Edwards is capable in that regard. And, you know, he was able to flash, you know, a little bit of his big arm during Wake Forest's spring game. But again, like I mentioned, you know, what from a game perspective, definitely, you know, some uncertainty as to what he'll look like under the lights.
It's just a spring game. I'll give you that.
That's fair.
He was 12 for 14, 126 yards, a touchdown. I watched every snap of it for his spring game. Not all the Wake Forest. I'm not that kind of guy. But I was interested in seeing what we were getting. So I watched every snap, and every time it was a first read throw. And I don't know if that's a spring game thing. I don't know if that's a coach thing. Like, let's get through the playbook, throw to the guy you're supposed to throw to, whatever. But you could watch the snap, look where his head's pointing, and put your finger on the screen. The ball was going to go under the finger. That's every play for that spring game. And so I'm just worried that he might not be there in the playbook. That's what the worry is. I think he's great. I think he could be. He has every throw. He has the arm talent. But does he have above the shoulders to get the job done in a Big Ten defense? I don't think so yet. Could he carry us through the non-Big Ten schedule if need be? Probably. I think he can get the job done. But I just think this is the guy that would make a great throw, and then there's an interception because they know where it's coming.
All right. Well, Ahmed, you kind of hinted on it. You talked a little bit about some of the walk-ons, named a few guys. I think if you're going to look for experience behind Leah, the one guy I guess you can hang your hat on a little bit, Eric Nigerian. He came in 2020, had a little bit of gamesmanship. It's kind of weird seeing him out there wearing a 22 or 24 jersey as a quarterback. Kind of interesting, but he ended up doing pretty good. Led the Terps to a win against Rutgers a couple years ago, throwing for 218 yards and 2 touchdowns in the second half. Hasn't attempted a pass and only appeared in 2 games since in 2021. So
those were crisp handoffs, though, Fred. Crisp handoffs.
Yeah. Listen, we don't have a ton of it. We don't have a ton of experience behind Leah at all. But Eric Nigerian, if I'm going to point out anybody in that group that's going to have at least knowledge of the playbook and could come in and run the offense seamlessly, he's going to be the guy.
Yeah, and Nigerian and David Faust. We haven't really seen much of David Faust, but those guys have really gotten a lot of praise from Loxley since Loxley's kind of taken over and they've joined the program. Faust, he has a big arm as well, but again, fans haven't really been able to see that, in a game setting, really, outside of like spring game throws, things like that. But yeah, and they also added freshman walk on John Griffith, former Bowling Green commit out of St. Francis, 4-year starter for him. So there are definitely some walk ons, but yeah, like you mentioned, Nigerian's probably the most experienced of the bunch behind Leo.
I'm sure it's just the fond memories of watching him beat those New Jersey kids, but like he's my, at least early season, I feel like he's going to push Edwards for that number 2 just because of the added experience, because he's been doing this in practice for so long, because I think that Billy's still got a lot of work to do in the getting to your second and third reads. I think that Nigerian early could be that number 2. Of course, Billy was brought in to be that guy. Eventually he'll get to be that guy, but I think he's at least going to push him. I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park for Billy.
Yeah, well, hopefully we don't have to worry about any of these guys, and that we're talking
hopefully
about
they're
Leah
just
for the entire
really
year.
working our defense every week, just making our defense shine.
Or we're winning so big that they're coming in the third, fourth quarter. And that's
I'd love to see them in the third quarter in like a Lamar Jackson 2019. We're up by 40 way. That'd be great.
Exactly, that'd be great. You mentioned a couple of the guys too, the freshmen coming in, right? Because these are guys that had some names to them, and some guys that have local ties. You mentioned Jaden Saray, starter at Wise since his sophomore year, but misses junior year due to COVID. Finished high school career 27-1, threw for over 4,000 yards and 60 touchdowns with a 67.4 percentage. Do you see Saray potentially fighting for any time this year? Do you think he is a redshirt guy and they kind of shelve him?
I would think that I would actually probably put both Survey and Cam Edge in that redshirt category, and I think maybe Maryland. It'll be kind of interesting to see. I mean, quarterback's tough. It's not like offensive line or receiver and things like that where you can, kind of give them reps, third quarter, things like that. I mean, quarterback, you kind of have to, get that rhythm, or there has to be like we mentioned, it's a blowout and they get a chance to kind of shine in 4-game maximum. But I, kind of going into the season, my expectation and my hunch is that, both Saray and Edge end up redshirting just because, just to kind of establish that depth. Now, will Loxley try and figure out a way to kind of stagger the depth? I think that's possible, like we saw with Colby Mcdonald in the running back room last year, where, he's now a sophomore, and you have Roman Hemby and Antoine Littleton that both of those guys are redshirt freshmen now. But I think Saray, I mean, he came in, if anyone's familiar with Wise, all they do is win. And Saray only has, I believe, one high school loss in his 2 years as a starter under his belt. So he comes in, kind of with a lot of respect locally, just being able to train with a lot of guys. He's actually trained with St. Francis 2024 4-star quarterback Mike Van Buren just as recently as 2-3 weeks ago up in the indoor facility. So, but I do think that Saray, I don't know that I see him making a day one impact, but he's another guy that he's kind of been able to he made a lot of strides from COVID till now, or kind of going into his Maryland career, where he was able to kind of he he gained some weight during COVID, and he'll be the first to tell you. And then he trimmed down before his senior season, got into shape, and he spent a lot of time with Steve Rapp, the Wise offensive coordinator, kind of working on his mechanics and getting a quicker release, things like that things of that nature. And I think that's kind of the guy that they always wanted to get. Don't know that I see him playing an impact this year, but maybe down the line.
Like I said, one loss, 27-1, 4,000 yards, 60 touchdowns, and 67.4 percentage. So, I mean, the guy's got skills, absolute skills, and could be a part of the future. Whether it's going to be anything this year, hopefully, like we said, we're only looking to see one quarterback this year in time that matters. So, but he absolutely could be a part of the future.
Yeah, and I think just kind of the big thing, getting and I'll even throw Billy Edwards in there, because we mentioned Nigerian kind of pushing Billy Edwards for QB2. I think just the fact that you get Billy Edwards, you get Jaden Saray, and then obviously Cam Edge, getting all three of those guys, and all three of those guys are very coachable. They take the coaching well, and their mentality is exactly kind of what you want in that quarterback. A lot of similar traits with Leah, kind of off the field. In terms of their focus, their dedication, their personable touch with their teammates. So I think just kind of getting all of them to work with Coach Enos, who I've heard is one of, if not the best, actual coach teaching these players and developing these players on the Maryland staff. I think guys like Gunnar Brewer, Brian Braswell, they probably give Enos a good shot, but Enos knows how to bring the best out of these guys. So I think getting the chance to work with Enos early on, that was a big reason why Cam Edge reclassified. I think that'll pay dividends down the line.
I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire a little bit with these two incoming freshmen, right? So Saray, Edge, which one do you think is more Division I college ready today?
He's like, I'm gonna get a text either way. Whatever name I say, somebody's gonna be upset about it.
Then they're even. I got you. I mean, they're right there. They're competing with each other. I like it.
No, but I'll go Edge because I think that he kind of has. I think he has the arm strength, and I think he kind of has the whole the mentality. And again, he should be Ed should be a senior in high school right now. Again,
Right.
he reached out to Maryland. He was proactive about, hey, I'm not too far off from being academically eligible to reclassify and enroll early. That all kind of happened after AJ Swan decided to go to Vanderbilt.
That guy,
I
Vandy.
yeah. But I'd go
Better.
Edge, and I do think Saray. I
Stood
think
up
he's
for the
made-
ugly girl at the party. Get out of here.
I do think Edge. I'm sorry. I do think for Saray, he's always had critics and doubters and people that have not been high on him, even before his just sophomore junior year. And he's kind of quietly, continuously been able to shut them up.
I like
So
that.
that's kind of maybe my biggest hesitation in going with Edge over that. But I do think Edge just kind of has that maybe. I don't want to say that it factor, but I think he's able to kind of do both more smoothly. And I think he former DeMatha who transferred over to Smyrna. I do think that he's kind of able to do both and kind of fits the scheme a little bit. But we'll see. I would actually probably give him closer to a 1A, 1B rather than Edges over Saray or anything like that. But if I had to pick, I'd probably go Edge.
If nothing else, what I see in this quarterback room is that we're actually building a little bit of depth. Like if these guys are able to stick around, I don't know if we actually know who the starter is in 2023. Like you have the three that we talked about here. They're transferred from Georgia Tech, Jaden Saray, Cam Edge. You got Champ Long coming in with the next class is looking great. Like you're actually building like a quarterback controversy in a good way. Like
I mean, you're
we're not
talking
picking
about a
between
room-
linebackers again.
You're talking about a room that has 8 guys, right? Exactly. That was going to be my point is that at 8 guys, I really hope you don't get to the linebacker portion where the linebackers in there playing. But no, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's good depth there. It's inexperienced depth. We don't really know what we have in some of these guys. But I like the Saray and Edge. I didn't know if one was head and shoulders above the other one as far as talent goes. Saray coming in with kind of the chip on his shoulder. I like that. Edge got the talent. So we'll see. I'm excited for the future with the quarterback room, and hopefully that continues to get better over the next couple of years. Next position group. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think just kind of having Leah as a role model for that young room, I think that really helps in addition to having Enos there.
That has
Yeah.
to be the reason why we're getting guys like, our St. Francis quarterback, John Griffith. He's walking on from St. Francis. There's lots of schools that would have taken him as a quarterback, but he's a walk on at Maryland to learn from Enos, to learn from Talia, to see how this is working around here. Like it's getting a reputation that you can come in here and develop. And that's all you can ask for any of these guys.
Right. All right, let's talk a little bit about the running back room. As running back, obviously, it's one of the question marks. We added a bunch of freshmen last year to the group, a lot of talented freshmen. But let's start this group with the senior, Chalon Famatau, the lone upperclassman in the unit. Did have a scary moment during the spring game where he was helped off the field very early in the game. I don't know what his injury status looks like, if he's, okay now and going to be ready to go. Ahmed, maybe you can give us a little insight on Chalon.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he was, kind of been battling back, and I think that the staff will be a little bit more cautious with him. But I do think that I expect to see him out there, and just kind of going into the season, I kind of do expect him to maybe be that number one guy. I don't know if again, Loxley's talked about this so many times. There's not going to be a clear cut number one guy, and then the rest of the room. It's going to be running back by committee, just
And that's
to make
okay.
sure that exactly, to make sure everyone's not banged up. But I do think that Famatau is going to be the guy that kind of takes that lead early on.
Yeah, I know Ryan and I talked about this the other day. Is one of the appeals for running back position at the University of Maryland is that you don't have to be a bell cow to be successful and to get attention and to be drafted. We've seen, the McFarlands of the world and, the Jake Funks of the world. These guys get drafted on limited carries because the carries that they get, they're optimized, right? And they're healthy and they're 100% rested for. They have plenty of stamina because they've got 3 and 4 backs that they can rotate in and rotate out. And I don't think this year is going to be any different because, again, you've got 3 second-year stars coming into the mix as well. All 3 scored touchdowns in the Pinstripe Bowl last year, so that's a
Who didn't
good
score a
sign.
touchdown? I think I got a touchdown.
Exactly. That's very true, too. And we'll start with Colby Mcdonald, man. This is a kid, I think he's got a lot of talent. He's got that game-changing type speed. He's a one-cut-and-go type of back, but he's an exciting back to watch.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I was actually kind of interesting because I remember looking back when they got McDonald and Antoine Littleton. And I was like, Littleton's a guy that will be great in between the tackles, and McDonald, I think, is going to be a lethal threat in the receiving game. Where I watched him, he was able to do a lot out of the backfield with his hands, and he's kind of, since he's arrived in College Park, he's been able to bulk up a little bit, and he's been able to show that he can run in between the tackles too, pick up the tough yards, and I think he's been able to maintain some of that athleticism, some of that burst, and so like you said, one cut back and kind of able to do some things in the backfield. And he was able to kind of get that increased opportunity last season. So definitely, I think that he's kind of been maybe the unexpected breakout candidate from last season going into this season with a lot of confidence as well. Kind of maybe, I don't want to say leader or anything like that, but definitely a guy that instills a lot of confidence in what that running back room can do.
Yeah, he himself was saying that, his work this offseason hasn't been about the running back. He did pretty well last year with that part of things. It's about the things without the ball in your hand, the picking up the pass blocking, the running routes in the route tree, doing these kind of things, knowing where the rest of the team is going to be.
I was going to say, I feel like he needs to be the guy that steps up and replaces the pass catching threat that Tayon Fleet Davis was for us last year. Because obviously, when you look at these back, Antoine Littleton, he's not built to be a receiving threat. Can he catch the ball? I'm sure, but he's not built to be a receiving threat out of the backfield. I think Roman Hemby, the next guy, my guy, Middle River's finest, as I say, that's a guy who can be that. He's definitely, in my opinion, I think he's the fastest back in this group, just straight line speed. But this is a kid who flashes potential both as a runner and a receiving back out of the backfield as well.
Yeah, Roman Hemby, that speed you talk about, clocked a 4.40 in high school at John Carroll, right down the road from you. Yep. He showed his speed with a breakaway run in the spring game. I think his speed really sets him up well. He's going to be a big part of those we talked last year, what we didn't have were those 40-yard runs that we had from the years before with Ant McFarland and Javon Leake that just kind of just broke it open. They could be a big part of that and a big part of the return game that we need somebody in the return game
Please.
that's not Dante Demas. all right?
Exactly. Don't let it be Demas. Don't let it be Rack. Don't let it be your prime A1 receiving threats. Let's get some of your running back depth out there that has speed in the return game.
Yeah,
That's something I was vetting for last year. Hard.
Used to taking hits from weird angles and not just falling to the ground. It's kind of part of their job.
Exactly.
I mean, you talk, like you guys mentioned, his top end speed, and that was something that they really liked about Hemby coming out of high school. And I believe when I went to one of his workouts when he was going into his senior year, one of his trainers mentioned, I think it was a 4.41, 4.44, 4.42 that he ran. I think it was either during or after his workout. And I think fans got a chance to kind of see some of that top end speed last year or in the spring game. And I was kind of surprised that we didn't see more of him last year. But again, like I mentioned with McDonald, it was maybe more so of a coaching decision to kind of stagger the depth chart a little bit. Just kind of with that long term eligibility, long term approach. Currently listed as a sophomore, but obviously he still has that redshirt availability, so you can mentally think of him as a redshirt freshman. But I think that that's going to be your maybe that change of pace back, and then obviously, like we mentioned, he'll have a chance to kind of play in that third unit on special teams. So I'm really high on him. I said it last year. I expected to see a lot of him, and I think obviously, just kind of with maximizing his 4 games while maintaining a redshirt possibility, I think we will see him more this fall. And like I said, he's a great complement to what Falmatau and McDonald are able to provide.
Yeah, as you mentioned, in the limited use he had last year, had 17 carries for 71 yards over his 4 appearances. He did score in both the regular season and the bowl game last year. So he's got a little bit of experience under his belt, and he's going to be bigger, faster, stronger this year. He's going to have a better sense of the, understanding of the offense. He's got his group of offensive linemen back in front of him. I expect big things from Omen Hemby as well. Another guy that I expect big things, maybe not this year, and we might see it in short bursts. We might see it in small flashes. That's going to be incoming freshman Ramon Brown. This guy looks like he's built for an NFL roster right now as a freshman coming into college. I mean, this guy physically has all the tools. He's highly recruited out of Virginia. This is a guy I think Terp fans need to know and get excited about.
Ramon Brown's built like a grown man. I mean, this guy does not look like a freshman. This reminds me of when Nick Cross came in. We're like, he's physically ready for it. What we saw with Nick Cross was Locks kind of kept the reins on him, didn't really let him play much. He was in a couple plays. When he was on there, he showed out. We remember the toe tap interception right in front of our seats. Yeah. Like, he was ready for it, but was the head there. And I just think that running back is such an easier transition. Like, of course, there's stuff to learn from the high school to college game for everyone, but to play, free safety or even strong safety in the Big Ten, there's a lot more to learn than this is the hole we need you to run in. So I think they're going to be able to use this guy a lot earlier, and I think he's going to put in some work. If we didn't have all these options in front of him, you'd be looking at somebody that could push for some of these records that we got for a freshman running back.
Yeah, and I think he's kind of maybe the most intriguing prospect in that running back room, and I think that he kind of has a chance to, you know, he probably maximizes his 4 games this year, not because of he's not talented enough. I think he's very talented. I think just kind of being that long term piece where he's kind of maybe not the feature back again, like we mentioned, because that's just not Loxley's mantra in the backfield, but I think he kind of do it all, and he has a really good build to him where he's able to maintain that speed as well. Really sturdy lower body that's kind of able to help him move, or when he gets contact, he's able to fall forward a little bit. But I think he's able to kind of do it in between and outside as well. So he's going to be pretty intriguing aspect, but he's kind of the cherry on top for the running back room.
Yeah, he's somebody I'm excited about. Like I said, maybe you don't see him too much this year, but if you see him in the maximum 4 games, I'll be happy with that because his future is really bright as a Terp. Well, another guy, I know you kind of mentioned him a little bit already, but he can't go without being mentioned. Antoine Littleton, this is a guy who's put in the work this offseason to kind of transform his body. Tell us a little bit about what fans can be excited about with Littleton this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think just I think he probably deserves the biggest shout out just over the last year because I remember, it was kind of after COVID, and there were some concerns about what he was going to come in as weight wise, and if you've looked up, seen videos of him working out now, I mean, absolute night and day. He's down to about 230 and rolled at one point. He was, I heard, about 270 north of, a little um, around that, and just kind of, you kind of wonder, is he going to be able to play running back? And he's been very adamant that I came to College Park to play running back, and he's down, like I said, down to about 230 now. I think in high
That's
school
huge.
yeah, I mean, it's really remarkable. I mean, to the point where I think I even just saw another video on Tuesday night of him working out. I mean, he's like completely trimmed down. And I think it's kind of, in high school, you watched him and, just his pure size and his footwork. He's very light on his feet, even with that I think it was what, 250, 255 his junior year. He was able to just kind of bulldoze people. And because of that footwork, was able to make some big plays out of it. But I think just the fact that he's kind of been able to transform his body, get into really good shape. I think that's kind of been able to, he doesn't have the same level of power, but he still maintained that while vastly improving his speed and that first step. So I think that he's going to play a role in that running back room this year. And like I said, I think he's just worth repeating again because he's really done everything that has been asked of him to kind of get to this point. I believe all the running backs got a chance to go over to Elijah Brooks's house on Sunday night, and just kind of rewarding the guys and making sure that, like the team chemistry in the room is very strong. And I think Littleton has been able to just show that he's completely bought into what this staff wants of him in order to see a role. And like I said, he's done everything and more. So really, really intriguing aspect in this running back attack.
I'm happy for him, but I'm a little sad for us because it was so much fun to watch him play last year. Man, that lineman with the running back skills is just something you just don't see in your life. And it was real fun when he got out there rolling.
To that point, though, this is what I was going to bring up, right? When you talk about bigger backs, right? They learn how to use their weight and use their weight to their advantage because they're expecting impact. Those lighter backs, they do everything that they can to avoid impact, right? So even though he's dropped weight, he still knows the proper technique of how to use his weight to his advantage. So he might be a little bit lighter, which is going to help him with speed and all that stuff, but he still knows the fundamentals, how to get low and how to use his base and his strength to power through guys. He might not physically have the weight, but I still think he'll be a bruiser even at a lighter weight. In my opinion, I just think that's how these guys develop.
It's definitely a guy they do not want to see get to the second or third level because he's going to roll over some DBs. No matter how much weight he's dropped, my man is still a big dude that knows what he's doing.
And he plays the same way. It's just the fact that he's just from a body composition standpoint. He's been able to just trim down. I think it's been
he was hurdling
really,
people at 270. I'm excited to see what he can do now.
Yeah, it's been really remarkable to watch. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, you speak of big guys, right? It may be a position that doesn't get enough notoriety, that people don't talk about enough. Got to talk about the fullback positions, right? Because they're in the backfield as well. And let's talk a little bit about Joseph Burns and what he brings to this roster this year.
Yeah, I think that was a guy, when he first enrolled, I heard a lot of packages about, Joey Burns and CJ Dupree together and goal line packages and, just the amount of size that kind of gives that unit. I think it was really impressive. And then obviously suffered a torn ACL freshman year, was kind of derailed at that point. One of two players that kind of stood out during that second team offense during the spring game. But, he's another St. Francis product. And, when you kind of ask, what's the St. Francis coaches, what do you expect out of Joey Burns? And it was always, this guy's a really good blocker, but don't sleep on him because if he, checks out and he motions out and he's able to, make himself available downfield, he can make plays and he has soft hands. So, but I think that just kind of the versatility that he brings in that backfield, I think that'll definitely help. So, kind of gives Maryland a chance to drop some unique things out of the backfield.
Yeah, Burns is definitely one of those two players that stood out to me in the spring game. I mean, him and Weston Wolfe, you talked about, what were one of Leah's issues was in the red zone and your goal line packages you mentioned. I was kind of getting excited driving home because I knew we were talking about this and just thinking about the combinations that we have with, like you said, I can picture Joseph Burns and CJ Dupree in the backfield with a Weston Wolfe on the line, and you got Deitches out wide, and pick your wide receiver that's best in the red zone. I don't even know who it is. Is it Copeland? Is it Rack? I don't know who your red zone wide receiver is, but you only really need one. We got some dudes out here. I just really am excited about all the options, all the big, strong dudes that we have brought in and developed in this program the last couple years. Again, not many of them are flashy 4 and 5 stars, but they're getting the work done. I mean, if you can't look at what these guys are doing and not be impressed. Joseph Burns lays the wood, and it's going to open some holes for people this year. And I hope he gets to score a couple on his own.
Yeah, what I like about him is he is more of the modern day fullback, right? When you think of fullbacks in the NFL, there's really not a whole lot of them out there, but Kyle Juszczyk, right? He's a guy who is a lead blocker but can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can surprise you with big plays here and there, and I think Burns has the ability to have that kind of an impact in this offense. As you said, they just got weapons everywhere. Who you get to stop? Right.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for it.
Dudes, like,
yeah.
I mean, you talk about it over and over again. Deitch is our number one tight end, but he worked out with the wide receivers all spring. Like,
right.
What's that reason? I think it's goal line. That's the reason.
Yeah. Well, they got to get better in the red zone. We talked about that as well. So let's dive into the tight end group. And obviously, we lose our big guy in Chigakonkwo. He goes on to his NFL dreams now with the Tennessee Titans.
Definitely the starting tight end. Forget Austin Hooper. We're not worried about that. It's Chigakonkwo, all right? It's fine.
Rookie of the year.
Get a lot of praise on there.
Yep.
I'm in on it. But you got Corey Dyches, as you mentioned, coming back this year. A guy who can line up in the slot as a wide receiver. He can line up on the line. He can do it all. Worked with the wide receivers corps, like you mentioned, during the spring. With all the players coming back from injuries and whatnot, there's a lot to be excited with Dyches as a receiver at the tight end position.
Yeah, and again, I think just kind of being able to work with Gunnar Brewer, just with the 30 years of experience that he's been able to kind of develop guys like, Randy Moss, Justin Blackman, Tutu Atwell, and obviously working with Alshon Jeffrey at the next level, and, just kind of being able to, instill some of those teachings on Dyches, obviously already proven to, receiving threat to Maryland fans, but just kind of being able to add to his toolbox a little bit. And I think, again, it's pretty clear. I think the biggest question is for him is going to be, what is his value as a blocking tight end? But it's pretty clear that, that's going to be, the question, get to the next level, because you're going to have to be able to do a little bit of both. But I think just the dynamic ability that Dyche just kind of has as a receiving threat. And like we mentioned, just being able to split out wide, just kind of that versatility. You talk about all the options in the wide receiver room. Don't sleep on Dyche, because he's able to forget when he was in high school, one-on-one especially in the red zone, he was a straight up nightmare. So I think that he's going to be the undoubted tight end number one in that room, and with a couple other guys just kind of complimenting him a little bit. So I think he's kind of on breakout watch for me.
Yeah, his stats are deceiving. 19 receptions, 208 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 of which came in the bowl game, but really all of his stats were backloaded. Like, he came on at the end of that season where you really saw it come into light. There was, he was still definitely wet behind the ears early in that season trying to figure out what tight end was as he came in here as a wide receiver, like we said. So you saw the acceleration of this man's talents, and I think he's going to be ready and really make himself known early and often in this season.
Right. You talk about blocking tight ends. If Dyches if that isn't his strong suit, well, CJ Dupree, 100% that is his strong suit. We're going to hope to see his game develop more as a receiving threat this year. But this is a guy come in as a freshman, one of the strongest guys on the roster as a freshman, right? And made an immediate impact day one. This is a kid I think I can get behind, be excited about, and I'm looking forward to see his growth in this offense as a receiver.
Yeah, and I think he's another guy, I think, like you mentioned, hit the nail on the head. I think he's blocking tight end first that's able to, make plays with his hands, especially in the red zone, kind of be that secret option for him. And I think it's pretty clear. I mean, as soon as he came in, and obviously he was an early enrollee for Maryland, but he was among the strongest players on the team, just kind of through quarantine, working out, things like that. And I think there's just kind of set the foundation for him to be that blocking tight end for Maryland. So I think, if Maryland, goes with that 2 tight end look, you'll see Dyches as the receiver, Dupree as the tight end or the blocker. And I think that he'll, I believe he played in every single game last year, and I think he'll just kind of get a chance to build on that a little bit more this year.
Yeah, he's just got to get a little bit better in the receptions that we can surprise some people. Sure, you want the general idea to be one's blocking, one receiving. But if you're not every once in a while switching that up and throwing to the guy that's blocking, it's going to be very obvious where we're going, and it's basically going to erase one player out of the play design. That's not going to work. I want to see that baby Gronk. I want to see this man catching balls. I want to see him doing big old spikes downfield. I was a little disappointed in spring game, but again, I think my standards for him just were too high. I just think that I thought this guy was just gonna walk in because I saw the workouts, I saw how big and strong he was, and to me, I was just like, this guy's ready. Well, yeah, he was ready to do one of two things.
Right.
We're still working on the other thing.
Physically
So,
ready to be a
yeah.
blocking tight end. His passing game will develop over
Yep.
time.
My standards were too high, and I think this guy will develop and be a very good player for us. And hopefully, that's by the end of this year. I mean, who knows? Well, we saw the acceleration of Corey Dyches last year. Maybe we see Dupree pick it up at the end of this year because we're going to need some help as we get deep into that Big Ten schedule.
Yeah, and he had a great mentor in Chig last year, as they were roommates last year, so kind of in that
Should help.
understudy
Yeah.
role. We'll see how that helps. Speaking of Chig, right? In our interview that we did with him, one guy that kind of flew under the radar, and we asked him who we thought would step up in this tight end group. Weston Wolfe was the first name that came to mind for Chig. This is a guy who redshirted last year, only appeared in 2 games, catching 1 pass for 10 yards. So we haven't really seen what Weston Wolfe's impact would be. But this is a guy who was highly recruited as well out of high school, and a kid that, also has that pass catching threat ability. Ahmed, what's your take on Weston Wolfe and what his impact could be this year?
Yeah, I was always kind of a big fan of Weston Wolfe. I just think that he's another guy when you talk about, like just being able to split out wide and being that receiving threat. I think Wolf, I don't know if he has the same level of explosion, but I do think that he kind of has that same, just a 6'5" frame where he's able to get downfield and he's able to split out wide. But I think that he'll kind of be that second receiving threat behind Dyches in that room. Didn't get a chance to see a ton of him during the 2021 season. He was able to make a highlight play in the spring game with that one hurdle, I believe, down the far sideline.
Yep.
But yeah, I think fans will see him more, and obviously, like we mentioned, just with the passing game, really going to be the one that carries this offense. I think that you kind of see him make a bigger impact, at least see him on the field a little bit more. But I think that he's kind of that mismatch because if he's going up against a linebacker, I think he does have the speed to go downfield, and if he's one-on-one, I think he'll have he has the route tree and the strong hands to be able to win those matchups. He hasn't proven it at the at the college level just yet against other competition, but I think he's shown flashes of it so far. So I think he has an opportunity to impress.
Yeah, limited exposure to this kid, but everything I've seen I've really liked. This to me is kind of your most well-rounded of the tight ends. We talked earlier, with Corey Dyches being kind of like the 9 receiving threat and 4 for blocking because he can't do it, and Dupree the opposite. He's a 9 blocker and he's a 4 for catching. This guy's kind of like your 6-7 in both. Like he's just kind of dependable and above average and can get the job done. So I think it would not be surprised if he ends up playing an awful lot, in those roles where, say, Dupree doesn't get his hands where they need to be, and you need to have a threat from both sides. He could be playing an awful lot on the other side, or vice versa. If you're just playing, the goal line where you want 2 tight ends that can both block, you're not going to see Dyches out there blocking. So I think you're going to see a lot more of this kid than we would have thought originally. And he showed it in that spring game. 45 yards on 5 catches. He looked good. And when he wasn't catching the ball, he was putting in work and trying to show why he's wearing the wrong color jersey with that second offense.
Another guy that had some hype behind him coming into last year's recruiting class, as we had a pretty good recruiting class of tight ends last year, was the third the third tight end coming in from that class was LaRon Husbands. What's this guy's deal? Do you think that he makes an impact this year? Do you think that he's kind of lower on the depth chart? Where do you see LaRon Husbands fitting into this tight end group?
I think he's kind of an intriguing prospect because I think he kind of has some athleticism and he's been able to show that he can be a blocker, he can be a receiver. I think he kind of has upper hand as a receiving tight end, and he had a setback last year. He had a pair of surgeries, one being hip surgery that derailed him being able to play his freshman year. So I think just kind of this offseason was just getting him back to 100%, getting him out there comfortable, getting him acclimated to just the actual being out there and getting into the swing of things. So I think Maryland fans will see him, and again, tight end room is different than the quarterback room or I guess quarterback's kind of the only position where it's tough to let players get that experience early on. But I do think that Husbands he'll have a chance to play a little bit more. But again, just kind of getting back to 100%, that was kind of the biggest thing for him this offseason. And I think that, he was another guy. He started out at Archbishop Carroll before transferring over to Flowers, where he was able to, at Carroll, he was, really productive receiving tight end at his junior season. So I think he's kind of a wild card to me in this room. But I think maybe we'll see Wolf and Dupree a little bit more, and obviously Digest a little bit more than Husbands as things currently stand.
Yeah, the high ceiling, but I think we're 1 year too early. I think we'll see a lot more of
Yeah.
him next year.
That's kind of what I assumed. Now, one of the guys that was kind of a wild card to me was incoming freshman Preston Howard. This is a kid that played quarterback at McDonough, then his senior year switched over to tight end. So I wasn't real sure, and I wanted to get your take on Howard and where you think he'll best fit with the squad. Obviously, we talked about it earlier. We've got 8 quarterbacks right now in the quarterback room. We actually do have a decent depth at tight end. Where do you see Howard kind of fitting with his team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, in that tight end room. I think it was really intriguing because kind of beginning of the 22 cycle, I remember looking at Preston Howard and I was like, I don't see him coming here. And I always thought, it was going to be, Penn State. That was the school that he was going to land at, because that was kind of always, the first two, the was sophomore and junior year. That was kind of always the local talk. He was going to end up at Penn State, and then I think it was Virginia Tech, Syracuse, and Maryland. I think those were the three, if I'm not mistaken. And he wanted to be at Maryland. He, was kind of always outspoken. He was able to kind of build a strong rapport. And I remember watching Howard a couple times. I think 2 games, 2 scrimmages as well in the preseason. And he was everywhere. I mean, he was quarterback at times. He was playing tight end. On the defense, he was playing a little bit of outside backer at times, and a little bit, like just kind of like a rover
Safety,
backer.
yeah.
And then obviously, yeah, and then at safety, I mean, he was able to come downhill and lay the hammer. So I think he's a really physical player. He has that natural athleticism to him in a 6'4", 6'5" frame, where he's able to kind of capitalize on that. I think it's just more because the thing with Howard is that his senior year was where he was able to kind of get his feet wet a little bit more in that tight end room, and then his freshman, sophomore, junior year was where he was playing primarily quarterback, and obviously he was not a quarterback at the next level, but he has that natural athleticism, and he always kind of showed that even when he was a quarterback. So I think just kind of with him at tight end now, I do think that he kind of has an opportunity to maybe take that next step, but now it's all going to be about technique and about the little things, the intricacies of the position. And I think tight end coach Mike Miller does a really good job of kind of bring that out, and he does a really good job of relating to the players, and that's kind of what helps set the foundation for these guys to kind of put in the the mutual work and the hard work and things like that. And I think Howard has the intangibles and the mindset to kind of take that next level. He has good speed. It's not it's not like a Corey Digest level in my eyes. I hope he proves me wrong. I don't want that to come across as me thinking he's not as good of a player. But I think that he's probably the one where he would probably benefit the most from a redshirt season, where he's able to just fully take in a full year, just learning the ins and outs of what to be in that tight end room. I do again kind of see him more as a receiving threat, but I think he kind of has just the tenacity to be able to be a tight end, but that's going to take time with the strength and conditioning aspect.
There's nothing wrong with being part of the future. And then also when you
No.
talk about tight ends and linebackers, they're always stacked in the special teams. They're always part of every return team, every coverage team, all the field goal block, everything. So these guys have lots of time they can get on the field, whether it is at tight end or whether it's somewhere else on the field. There will be spots for them to play. So when we see last year where like you said, we take 3 tight ends or 4 tight ends, whatever it was, some crazy number. Everybody's like, what are we doing? Well, we need athletes. And this
Right.
is where the athletes play. Like, we have a bunch of converted quarterbacks who were the best athletes, but they're not going to be quarterbacks. We got the tight ends, we got linebackers. We're stacking talent right now, guys. This is what it looks
Right.
like. This is what a developmental program like Maryland has to do to compete. And I see a lot of potential here. We've talked about nothing but depth here. We're not
Right.
we're not scraping the barrel.
Yeah, and I think with Howard specifically, though, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, he's got a good coach and Mike Miller to learn from. He's got the physical size and tools to do it. And a guy that played quarterback, typically quarterbacks are high football IQ guys, so he's got the intelligence, right, to make it all work. it would benefit him, I think, to your point, having that red shirt season to just kind of put it all together, be ready for next year. Corey Deitch is more than likely he moves on, for his career, and then he comes in as that, second, third, fourth tight end wherever he falls, depending upon his development. But this tight end group is, in the beginning, at the end of last year, we were going into the offseason, I was questioning a little bit, right? Because, to Ryan's point, he mentioned earlier, CJ Dupree maybe hadn't lived up to what I expected or what I hoped he would be as a receiving threat.
That's because I was really, in your ear pumping him up as the next great thing since sliced bread.
Well, when you hear Baby Gronk, right, you picture Gronkowski. You think of him as the complete tight end, right? And I think his game will get there. We need to see it this year. We need to see him take that next step as a receiver. Weston Wolfe was a pleasant surprise hearing that from Chig. I do think Deitch, he kind of reminds me. I know our fan base is kind of split. We have we have Commander fans,
they used to
and
be.
we have Raven fans. If you want to compare him to anything, I can kind of compare him to Isaiah Likely, who was the tight end that the Ravens drafted this year out of Coastal Carolina, a guy who can line up as a receiver. The NFL draft scouts didn't know whether they should draft him as a receiver or a tight end. That's Corey Deitch, and that's what he can be. So I'm really excited to see his game take that next step, being the primary pass catcher for this group. So it's a lot to be excited about, man. Quarterback, running back, like you said, depth, tight end, everything.
Yeah.
What's wrong with your team, Ahmed? The Commanders putting in an alternate helmet on their year 2. You didn't come up with enough helmets in year 1.
Oh man,
I can't support that franchise anymore. I'll just publicly say it. I'm a Chargers fan from here on out. I just need to completely dissociate from everything.
Don't worry,
man.
they got an alternate helmet. Everything's
Dan
fixed.
Snyder is not going to take another second of my time as long as he leads that franchise.
Well, actually, you should totally follow the Dan Snyder yacht Twitter where they track where his yacht is, because it's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, I'll give that account a follow. But yeah, man, I've wasted enough of my life on the Washington. I have too many inappropriate names for that franchise coming off Commanders.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Redskins is not the most offensive thing we could say about your team. It's just not.
It's not. But yeah, I think Deitch, when you kind of think about him, I think he might actually be just the biggest X factor in that passing game, like we mentioned. I think I think there's a lot to like with him. So it'll be kind of fun to watch him develop this year.
I'm going to put both your guys' feet to the fire. So besides the starters, right? So you can't name Leah, you can't name, let's say, Shallon, you can't name Deitch. Who's the one guy of these 3 positional groups that you're most excited about with their future? If you had to pick one guy,
I'll let you go first, Ahmed.
I was going to say Hemby. I mean, I think he's to me, like, I think that he's gonna just his top end speed, and I think kind of what he's able to do in the running back room. Not that I think Challen or McDonald or Littleton, like, I don't think they do, but I just think the top end speed that Hemby has and what he's able to do on the outside, I think will kind of provide a jolt for that running back room. And I think that running back, when you talk about balanced offense, I think they need that. So kind of that big playability and, the pass, and then, find a way to get Hemby the ball in space and, watch him work. So I think that's the guy
I like it.
I'm really pulling for.
So you want a this year answer or like top ceiling answer?
Top ceiling.
Top ceiling is definitely our 4-star running back coming in, Ramon Brown. Like that guy is it could be an absolute game changer for this program. This year, I think they hide him. I think they try to give him enough, run to show them what they want to do with him in the future. So maybe his stats won't show up all that much this year. So this year it's Weston Wolfe. I think is going to blow up.
Yeah, I was going to say, you took me. If Chig believes in this guy, Weston Wolfe, then I've got no reason not to believe in this guy. I think he'll be the exciting second pass catching threat. Not to discredit CJ Dupree in any kind of way. I just think Weston Wolfe is waiting in the wings, and Chig spoke very highly of him. So I'm vested 100% into this guy, and I think he can make a major impact this year. I'm excited for him.
Yeah, him and Joseph Burns definitely were the ones that didn't look like they belonged in white jerseys. So I think they're going to keep trying to prove that.
Right. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in as always, each and every week. Next week, we'll be back with wide receivers and offensive linemen, continuing our positional breakdown. So make sure you stay tuned for that. If you're not already, make sure you're following us on all our social media platforms. You can follow the show at Shell and Tell Pod. on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can follow Ryan at Terps B. Espert, me at Fred BLBS, Ahmed at Gafir the Turtle, and at Inside Black and Gold. If you are not subscribed to Inside Black and Gold, you're missing out. I don't know what you're doing. Spend that extra couple dollars a month. Make sure you get in on that for all the latest on recruits and update information around the Maryland sports programs.
Football
No
season's-
click.
Yeah, it's football season right around the corner.
No
Yeah,
clickbait that has nothing to do with Maryland. No, just news about nothing. All the Maryland stuff. Everything you guys want to read.
Exactly. Ryan, sign us out.
All right, guys. Keep the faith. Don't worry about what dumb Twitter says about star rankings. Star rankings sucked before COVID. Now they're dealing with 5-game sample sizes. Calm down. We're fine. Everything's going to be good. Look forward to all these great players we talked about and all the great players we're going to continue to talk about. Get your tickets. Get in the shell. Have some fun. Get there early. Let's get some tailgates going and really show what Maryland's all about. Till next time, guys, here's to wishing all is well under the shell.